Ladies and gentlemen, I think we did it. I think we're here. It's CODTACULAR Episode 7. It's Puckett, Rambo, Ray, and we've got some very big news for you guys today. Ray has a new job. He'll tell you all about that in a moment. But first, we want to remind you, we are live right now on twitch.tv/Puckett on every Tuesday at 7 o'clock Eastern. But if you missed the show live, don't worry. You can catch it all on youtube.com/Puckett or on Spotify, the CODTACULAR. You can also check us out on Apple, iTunes, Podcast, and Google Play. Coming to you soon. Just search CODTACULAR. It's going to pop up. But Ray, let's jump into it. We got the big news coming today. About an hour ago, you posted you got a new job. What are you doing?
Yeah,
where are you working, buddy?
I'm the Dallas Empire head coach officially. I got my nice little apparel on. Now we can see it on video. All right, looks good. It's today's my birthday too, man. Don't forget that.
Happy
I'm 31
birthday,
years old.
Ray.
I'm an old man.
A new job for your birthday.
I know, it's pretty cool. But yeah, I announced my departure from my last job 2.5 weeks ago, and today was the announcement of my involvement with the Empire. I've been kind of working with the guys a little bit since it's been 2 weeks now, kind of on and off since I'm dealing with a move. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm actually moving to Dallas next week, giving up the Bay Area life, the Bay life. Everything's been, honestly, the Bay's been really cool. The weather here is absolutely amazing. I'm playing golf in December every year. It's like everyone's like, oh my God, snow and Christmas. I'm like, yeah, I'm hitting some golf balls and there's no ice cubes anywhere around. So
Texas might have a few ice cubes for you, but then you can golf the next day. Yeah, it's crazy weather. For those who don't know, Ray, of course, was a professional player. Then he went studio side and was working on the design teams for Call of Duty. Recently left that job at Sledgehammer and is now going to be working for one of the Call of Duty League teams, not only as the head coach, but according to this Dallas News article, Ray, you're also a general manager.
Yeah, a new part of the job discovered today. I'm excited for that too, I guess.
Now Ray is too humble to brag about himself, so let me use the Dallas News article to brag about Ray. Dallas Empire named Call of Duty legend Raymond Lussier as general manager, head coach. The Empire now have a former player COD mastermind at the helm to guide them to their potential. The Dallas Empire were already one of the most talented Call of Duty teams in the world, but they may have just received their missing link. Raymond Rambo Lussier was announced to be the Empire's general manager and head coach Tuesday afternoon on the team's Twitter. Attached to the tweet was a video in which the Call of Duty veteran talked about his new role. He played the game for 6 years, starting back when Call of Duty 4 was at the helm of the franchise. Lussier even played for Team Envy under owner Mike Rufail. Let's keep going, Ray. This was a homecoming of sorts, but Lussier went straight to talking about the task at hand. The Empire 3 and 4 have the world champions in James Clayster Eubanks, Ian Crib6 Porter, and a young star in Kyler Hook Garland. But a significant make of the team includes players that are brand new to the scene, like Anthony Shotzi Cuevas Castro and Endavir Ili Diwali. Sorry, I just butchered that one, Illy. The pieces are there, but some guidance could be acquired. My job here as a head coach is to make sure players are prepared as much as possible and they understand everything they're trying to do as a team. That's a great quote, Ray. This article
prepared like 10 times in that video.
This article keeps going. They just keep talking about how excited Dallas is to have you on the squad. Right. Is it weird that you've been on the clock for less than 12 hours and you already have an article about you in the Dallas News?
No, it's exciting. It kind of shows how eSports has grown through the years, man. We didn't get this kind of coverage back in the day, and I think it's super cool.
I think it's amazing. If you just think of like where we were covering your wins back when you were winning championships to now just announcing general managers and head coaches, it's pretty awesome to see the growth in the media. If you guys want to check out that full article, it's on dallasnews.com. Show them some of that esports support. We love that they're getting more involved covering the activities. But Ray, let's talk about this though, because you are now a head coach with a team that is about to play in 3 days. Have you been able to join any scrims? Have you been talking with the players? Catch me up. Where are you at currently in that head coaching role at the Dallas Empire?
So we can kind of dip back like a month ago whenever I knew this was actually going to happen when my visa stuff got approved and I gave my 2 weeks. I started obviously paying attention to the game a lot more at a technical level and making sure I understand what's going on and what spawns and basically all the information you would expect a head coach to have and understand in the game. So obviously I'm still, I'd say, a little bit behind, but for the most part I caught up. I've been sitting in last week when I wasn't dealing with all the move stuff. I was sitting in all their scrims and really kind of pulling the mini map and seeing what's going on in the map and where people are spawning and what happens when people do certain things, and really kind of wrapping my brain around what I used to do as a player and really kind of gauging what we need to accomplish on the maps to really get our game to the next level.
What are the first things you look at? Because you're kind of coming with fresh eyes, watching a team that you didn't draft. What were your early takeaways?
So for the most part right now, I'm trying to avoid having too much impact on what they're doing. I really want to get my grassroots on what's going on in the game first. I want to understand the callouts. I want to understand the maps and the spawns. Mostly the spawns really for respawn modes. It's really kind of how can we manipulate what's going on to our advantage, and that's kind of what you're trying to do as a player. So as a coach, it's my job to make sure they're doing that right. So really kind of picking their brains and discussing with them, like, hey, what if I see something that seems off? Like, are we actually trying to accomplish? Kind of questioning some of the stuff. That's most of what I've done with them so far, is really make sure that they're on the same page as to understanding the things they want to do. If I say something and they're like, then it's like, okay, it creates a discussion and it helps them kind of get to that level and grow as a team already. So it's something that definitely been missing. Like the one thing that I feel like the team's been missing since I've been there and before I was there, and what I've heard discussing is the progress they get when they scrim. It's hard to progress as a player, especially with 5-man teams. Now, back when I played, it was 4-man, so it was a little easier to kind of have one person kind of control what was going on in the game. But now, because things are so fast, everyone kind of needs to have a good understanding of what needs to happen when they're in this scenario, in X scenario. So if one player doesn't understand that, the whole wheel kind of falls, and then bad things start to happen. But yeah, no, it's mostly been so far me understanding the game and trying to push my knowledge above everyone else, kind of what I used to have a position on, without being too egoistical. And yeah.
Did you ever play with Crim6 or with Clayster? Did you ever end up being teammates? Was this one of the Envy lineups with Clay? Did that ever match up?
I did team with Clay.
Okay.
So I did team with Clay in my transition from Optic to Envious. We teamed for one event. We were playing under Roughnecks. It was me, Clay, Parasite, and the guy called Jake.
Oh, yeah.
And it was Intake, was his actually gamer tag. It was the UMG Chicago event, which is the one that Optic Gaming with Nate Shot, the first event they played on, won. And we ended up getting third, fourth, if I remember clear.
I think you were semifinals, yeah.
Yeah, we lost the Complexity. We lost the Farico in the winners bracket, and then we lost the Complexity and we got reverse swept. Actually, we were up 2-0 against Crim6 and them, and we got reverse swept. Yeah, it was sad.
Ooh, right.
But yeah, that was my only time I got to play with Clay, and then a few weeks after, we weren't entirely sure. We wanted to keep Jake from the team, and then Parasite kind of had his own things going on, and that's when me and Clay were like, okay, well, like I told Clay, I was like, dude, you're my next big timer, and I remember specifically, and he reminded me this. Because I knew Clay was a great player, and he's got that emotion and kind of that drive to really understand the games at the level I wanted to play. So to me, that's a great teammate to have by the systems, quote unquote, that I run by. Is really kind of, we know what we're trying to do on the map, and we know these are the best things we can do. We abide by them. We don't go rogue and do a bunch of stuff that don't make sense. But yeah, then I saw NDS were looking for a player, and I felt like that was an established team that I could probably join, and then I ended up trying out, and then obviously Clay went his own way and did his own thing, and ended up joining Cole a few months later, and then you know what happened after that. So it was a good decision for both of us, I guess.
Is it weird now being in a position to be coaching someone that you used to team with, or I guess guys that have been around for as long as they have?
Honestly, I think out of all the coaches, like quote unquote coaches or ex-players, I think I'm going to have the easiest time to transition into that role, because I already kind of did that when I played. Right. I always feel like it's not any different besides me having to move my thumbs around, which I apparently wasn't great at certain points in my life. I was okay. Everyone gives me flack.
Yo, Ray could shoot, guys. Ray could shoot.
I could shoot.
Close range, a little better than long range, but Ray could shoot.
But yeah, so it's for me, it's a pretty easy adjustment. It's like now I get to see everything from a third point of view, or third person perspective, seeing top down and kind of coaching and watching mini maps and more worrying about kind of the nitty gritty things. And hopefully the hardest thing I think I'm going to have for my role is to really kind of get through to players and help them get on help everyone get on the same understanding of what we need to accomplish. And hopefully they have a good faith in my ability to kind of help them do that. And then again, it's like, and even when I played and I did those things, the hardest times I had and the worst teams I was on were the players that weren't necessarily willing to listen to what I had to say.
Right.
And we didn't see eye to eye in different situations like that. Like for example, Karma is a perfect example of a great player. I mean, an all-time GOAT who's still competing to this day. And me and him just didn't see eye to eye. We couldn't really grasp the game on the same level. He saw things one way, I saw things another way. And we clashed heads because of that. And it's not a good environment to be in if you have players on the team that aren't, especially back then when it was 4 players, if you have one guy that's like a quarter of the team that's not willing to do the same thing you're doing. So, but yeah, that's probably the one thing that I'm not necessarily worried about, but that's definitely going to need some work in understanding and making sure everyone a lot of talking as a group to really make sure that we're on the same page on that front.
When I watched Dallas, I mean, it was early, right? This is mostly off of Minnesota, and then again what we saw in London just a week and a half later. Dallas looked like they had more structure than a lot of the teams that were just running and gunning. So I feel like you're kind of coming in with a leg up where you had some of the veterans trying to teach some of the fundamentals, but now you can take that off the shoulders of Crim6 and Clayster and just let them focus on slaying again, and you can really now have a major impact in the development of Shotzi and Illy. What's it like going into an office where you have this young potential and two 18-year-olds that have not been able to perform the way they do on land up to this point?
Honestly, this is probably my favorite part of the job. And that's one thing, even when I played, I love having new guys around the block and helping them teach. And most of the time, all these kids were willing to listen. And so far with Shotzi and Illy, they're actually really good listeners. And they take a lot of crap from the old guys. Like, and I mean, this is kind of behind the scenes stuff, but yeah, those Crim and Clay are like always vocal about things they see in the big game. And they don't always deliver in the best way, but those kids are like hard as rock. And they're honestly like, they're all open ears. They're willing to listen and understand. And they know they're not exactly like on the same level on the respawn. Illy's been a search all-star for a couple of years, and obviously that shows. And he's got stuff to tell them about in Search and Destroy and see certain things. And it's really cool. I like that environment and the possibilities and the level that these guys can achieve, especially the young guys that haven't really proven what they can do yet, is extremely high. And again, it's just a matter of like kind of going back and forth and discussing and players always have different levels of the amount of time they're willing to put in and the amount of effort they're willing to put in outside the game. Because, I mean, I still think that the scene is incredibly underdeveloped and understanding of that. Spending time watching things and learning things as a team, not just playing, is a huge aspect to learn the game.
Oh yeah,
and really get on the same page. Like, because when you just play, like a team could easily be the best team in the game to start a game and just literally just play every day, and they wouldn't get better. You stagnate, right? You reach a level where your understanding is this, but if you don't sit down and watch the intricacies of what happens on the map and the spawn changes and whatever developer update happens that changes certain things you learn, if you don't spend your time outside playing, watching those things and keep an eye on them, then you lose track of what's happening. And then other teams that are actually doing that kind of get to that next level.
So
Go
ahead.
Oh no, I was
going to ask, are you going to be the iPad guy? Are you going to have like a Microsoft Surface? Are you going to have printouts of the mini map? Because I know you're going to be that coach who sits down and breaks down the mini map with this team. Have you thought about the best way to do this with the squad?
So I don't want to share too many secrets, you know.
Okay, all right.
I can't be sharing with everything with I do have some other.
I'll just say you have to live up to the London Royal Ravens, because I saw the coaches right after their rounds going through mini maps and Search and Destroy, and I think it was Josh who was circling things and writing arrows out. So I expect mid-match breakdowns of what's happening.
So one thing that I'm pretty adamant about, and even this is coming from me as an old player, is that when you're at a tournament, you're not necessarily there to learn. You're there to compete and prove out what you've learned in practice.
Okay.
I don't want players players have an idea of what they should be doing. Granted, if there's a big piece or a small piece of information you can relay, but you're not trying to reroute someone's brain and trying to make him re-understand the situation, because that's when you lose track. And it's hard, especially, again, I want to emphasize the fact that it's 5 players doing things now.
Right.
And there's not necessarily, there's kind of roles with like ARs and SMGs, but beyond that, it's not like back in the day where we had like an objective player and a support and a slayer, like where you specifically had one job to do. Now it's kind of everyone has to do everything a little bit. Even if you have an AR, you have to push the hard point sometimes. Again, in certain situations that change. Granted, though, those guys have like mindsets and ways they approach those situations differently. But really, at the core, it's kind of like there's 5 guys rotating through the map. And then if you change, like if you reroute some information and one of the guys doesn't grasp that or see that situation as that information you changed, and you're trying to do X and O's in the middle of a map, that gets a little scary to me. That's when you're like, you can possibly lose track of what you're actually trying to accomplish. And that, to me, that's more reserved for practice, like practice days and scrims, like all that stuff. For sure, I'll have X and O's. I'm trying to use telestrators.
You wouldn't try and update your Search and Destroy overnight, knowing that another team's probably going to ban a map that you're stronger in and try and force you back on
overnight. Sure,
okay.
Like if we're preparing for specific matches beforehand, yeah, sure, you can. I feel like that's okay. But like in the middle of a match, not really. Okay. Like I wouldn't go in between maps and tell my guys, guys, this next map, they did this and you're going to change. Like we should already have that information. For the most part, who you're playing against for the weekend, right? Like I don't feel like I've had the time to really kind of sit down and really prepare for this weekend because obviously I'm moving and such. For the following events, the rest of the year, I guarantee that I'll have my little Rambo book, and it's going to have specific notes.
Are you going to be in LA?
I will be in LA. Yes. I don't know. Again, I don't know what my involvement's going to be.
Will you be accepting alcoholic beverages to celebrate your birthday a few days late? If people
Sure.
are in LA, can they bring you gifts, Ray?
I'm not much of a drinker, but I'll drink some water while you drink booze. How about that?
Bring Ray a coffee and some chocolates.
There you go. Yeah, bring me a lot of chocolate. I'm cool with chocolates.
We're gonna have plenty of time to grill you on how exactly you're gonna be coaching, but honestly, I feel that's unfair, and we should probably keep some of those secrets behind closed doors. But let's talk about the big news for your team because they are back after not competing in Atlanta. They will be heading to LA. We're going to the home series there, hosted, of course, by two teams. We've got the Gorillas and Optic Gaming co-hosting this one. And I just want to go over the standings before we get this one started here, Ray, because we look at the number one spot. That belongs to the Huntsmen, but that's probably just because they've been to the most events. They're finally sitting out. FaZe Clan is 20 points behind them at 70 and second. You got the Paris Legion at 50. Mutineers are at 40 with the Rocker at 40 as well. Royal Ravens also tied in that fourth spot. And then Dallas Fuel kicks things off with 30 points in number 7 position. Gorillas, Subliners, Surge, and Ultra all with 10 points. And then Optic Gaming all the way down at 12th place with 0 points. So this weekend, when I look at it, huge weekend for FaZe Clan, right? If they get 20 points at least, if they win 2 matches, they're going to tie the Huntsmen for the number 1 position on the board. We've got the Mutineers, who just finished second. They could score up to 50 points this week and jump into our top 3, which I think a lot of people expect. And then you got Minnesota Rocker, as well as the Empire, who could also be jumping up the leaderboard quite a bit. Let's talk about your team, though. What are your expectations going into the groups here? Because when I looked at this, I was like, man, this is going to be a rough day for everyone in Group B.
Yeah, it seems like Group B is definitely a more stacked group based on what we've seen so far.
We got Atlanta FaZe, Dallas Empire, Florida Mutineers, and the New York Subliners.
Yeah, I mean, Mutineers finalists last event, FaZe won last event. That's a kind of a rematch already. It's kind of crazy. And against our team against the Subliners, and Subliners have had didn't they bench 0, right?
Yep.
Which is to me is, I mean, I don't know the stories, what's going on behind the scenes, and I don't want to discuss my opinions or whatever is going too much, but I'm kind of bamboozled by that one. He's a world-class player, really great communicator, and maybe they're just not meshing. I don't. It's they have a really young team there, so I honestly don't know what's going on. But I mean, Revan's a great coach, and they have a good staff over there with JP. So I'm sure there's some statistics that show why, or they prove out why that player was dropped, but benched. I mean, dropped and benched are basically the same things going on in the community right now.
0. I know for a fact that I won't be playing in LA. I just have to see what I can do to play again. My team wasn't doing great. I don't feel like I was the only issue, but someone has to go, and that someone was obviously me. Hopefully after LA I can do something. Sucks not to play, but F it. They do what's best for the team, or what's best for them, and if they think getting rid of is it, then I don't really care. Okay, so clearly frustrated when it happened. It looks like Happy
overall,
is going to be
tweet,
jumping
right?
back in here. Yeah.
Overall, I guess that's how I would represent it. Yeah, Happy.
And a lot of people are wondering, who is this Happy guy? Why is Happy on this squad? Happy's a New Yorker, and I know that New York XL and the New York Subliners, one of their goals was to find New Yorkers and really kind of support the ecosystem here in New York City and grow the gaming scene in New York in general. And they wanted a face that could represent that. I felt like Zuma really fit in for New York well. Sensor was another Long Island boy here in New York City. Happy, another sub, a New Yorker on the lineup. What success do you think they can have with this lineup, though, Ray? Because this has been quite a few events for New York now, and they are struggling. They're coming into this event with just 10 points, 1 match win this entire time.
Yeah, we talked about it a little last time as well, how team changes and whatnot aren't necessarily always the answer. It might be a more bigger fundamental problem that's going on with the team. I couldn't tell you why they haven't been that successful. They have good players in the team. I mean, all of them are. I would call them individually talented players. Obviously, they're not meshing on the team level and they're not accomplishing what they do on the maps to give themselves a chance to win. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I don't feel comfortable too bad mouthing a team we're playing against.
Yeah, that's your first round matchup. I should have started with
guys.
there. Yeah.
Good luck. But yeah, I mean, obviously.
Is there a star player? Let's start there. Is there one guy on this team that you think maybe we should focus on shutting down, or this is definitely the player to look out for?
I don't know if I can share it. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, just coming in, obviously, just from a perspective that I haven't seen much, but from the scrims I have seen watch, Zuma seems like he's still very, very got a lot of kind of impact on the map and how he kind of comports himself around what's going on. To me, it's to a point like just looking at it from outside perspective, not saying too much, just saying a little bit, little pieces. But Lamar accuracy seems like he's always been kind of a super slow paced players, and they have a team where if you just look at it from like previous Call of Duty games,
yeah,
they have a player who's really slow and then players are really fast. And
so break this down for anyone who's unfamiliar. You got accuracy who's kind of slow.
Right. Accuracy was really slow, kind of stays back, stays put with an AR, doesn't really try to rotate too much and cut off choke points. He'll, like, if he finds a position he likes, he'll try to hold it for as long as he can. And then you got, like, Attach or Zuma or guys who just kind of just run in at you and just get shit done. And if they don't get the kills, then they don't get shit done. And if there's nobody really there to rotate behind them and kind of trade it off, then that's where the mentality of the slow and fast goes. This game, more so than any other game, you need to have a pace that's, like, close enough. Like, imagine these are the thresholds of slow and fast. If you're not matching like this, then bad things happen because you do not create any space for yourself on the map. FaZe is like this. You got Major Maniac who's slow, and then you got the rest of the guys just flying and mow your face down and don't stop.
Yep.
And then and even like him slow isn't slow. It's like he's kind of always he'll sit on the hard points he needs to sit on for the most part in respawns, but he's always kind of rotating. He's close enough to the whatever's going on to have an impact on it after the fact that his SMGs or people are flown in aren't really getting shit done. He gives himself a chance to create that room on the map. And that's kind of like pacing in this game in general seems extremely important. And some teams, I think that's like, for example, Optic is a team that is not, that completely is out of whack on pace. And that's something that and it's hard to describe. And this is where like the coaching team comes in, where I can't really go into what I would do to change that because I can't share that information anymore.
Yeah, that's Revan's job. That's not your job.
Yeah, exactly. And that's Revan and Pac-Man for Optic. But yeah, the pacing is like an extremely important part of this game. And if teams, like, you will see, like, it's actually pretty easy to catch when you watch. You need to look out for it a little bit. But if they switch cameras on players, you can see they make a push, and then they switch out to the last guy who's kind of, like, lingering around, and he's not coming off spawn. You're like, oh, well, what is this guy doing? And he seems to be rotating alone through this bay. Like, you can tell there's, like, something not matching up, right? Like, and that's kind of, like, the basis of some teams, in my opinion, in the league right now aren't doing well because of that.
So let's identify the teams that are doing it right. Who do you think is finding the right pace of the game or is able to put on pressure together?
So I'm not going to speak for my team. I'd rather keep that information.
Yeah, we'll
myself.
just always set Dallas Empire side. Right. Ray is always going to be neutral on Dallas Empire podcast.
Neutral. No highs, no
the
lows.
Future of CODTACULAR, they're 50.
That's a no talk. So I'll let Will talk crap about my team. I'll talk crap about his team too. I'm sure Scum will.
What about everyone else? So let's highlight some of the best in the Call of Duty League right now.
It definitely seems like Huntsman and obviously FaZe for sure I'd say are the best team that's paced right now. And it's also what's scary about them is their pace is like people's pace are here, like they're just a little on a higher threshold, right? They're just all together, they're just fast as a team, and because of their skill level and because of the amount of pressure they put on you nonstop during a game, that's what makes them right now the best team in the game. Like that's why they're winning. And it doesn't seem like people are giving them much competition. We did see Minnesota take 2 maps off of them last event, and that actually exposed a lot of their issues.
Are they fast?
Minnesota is actually the opposite.
I felt they were very slow compared.
Minnesota's a pace isn't. I'd say Minnesota is pretty good, if like on par with most of the best. But just in general, again, like if we're taking the threshold, we're going a little lower.
Yeah.
They're much more. We're going to control the map. We're going to out rotate our opponents. And it showed, like especially during that gunrunner hardpoint, like they exposed them really bad. I mean, that was like the score wasn't too bad. I think it was a 60, 70 point game, which technically is a lot in this game when you win by over. Like if a team doesn't get to 200 points, it's almost like the 100 point club of like old previous hardpoint games. But yeah, no, that showed a lot of kind of like pizzazz and the fact that if you out rotate a team that just kind of runs around and gets really aggressive, and they don't have positions to kill you, like you can stop people like that. Like that's always, I mean, this is not legendary, but this is like old school Call of Duty where like Black Ops 2, going back to Black Ops 2 Hardpoint days, where teams would just previously like rotate 30 seconds in advance and send 1 or 2 guys to deal with scrap. Especially now since you have 5 players, you can afford to send 2 or 3 guys to rotate and control the main areas you want to control, and then have 2 guys kind of play for scraps. And that's something that's not too bad in this game because you don't really spawn that far from hills in this game. It's pretty hard to kind of make people spawn out. So those are elements that people are doing a lot, right? You see a lot of that. Some teams play too much for scraps. Some just don't play for scraps at all. And then that's why like a team like Rocker, where in that specific map against FaZe and Gunrunner, they were out rotating, and they always had a guy that was just kind of lingering, being annoying. Like even his 5-6 seconds on the rotate where you're just scrapping time and you're causing them to not gain time, or you're contesting a hill, like that annoyances pushes 2 guys to kind of run back. And if they, and again, that messes with the pace, right? Because if 2 guys got to go back to the hard point while my other 3 have to rotate in a bad position because the other team's already there, then nothing good comes from that. So Rocker showed some really good pizzazz in that match.
And you still have some speedsters. When I said they were slow, I just meant compared to the frantic pace that FaZe puts on.
No, 100%. They definitely seem controlled. Like we'll just call it control.
Control.
Like,
there we go.
Yeah, if you have like frantic's probably. I mean, I don't know if frantic's the right word because FaZe is for sure controlled, but just at a higher pace. But,
yeah, frantic is
we'll
probably
frantic.
not.
I don't want to talk.
No, you're right. That's not the right word because they are laser focused, but they are checking every corner on that map and they are sliding as often as they can.
Yeah, they slide a lot.
Let's jump into some of these matchups here because I know everyone in the chat wants to know our predictions here. So Dallas versus New York, just based on paper, everything is against New York in this battle. You've only won 1 match so far, and that was a team that came back and later beat you in the same tournament in the bracket back in London. Dallas, on the other hand, was expected to be the best team in Minnesota, had the toughest possible start to the season, and didn't get the early points, but still everyone is saying is in the top 3. They went to the finals in London, and then they didn't participate in Atlanta. So I feel like this is a big tournament for the Dallas Empire, for your squad, Ray, to really prove themselves. Also in this matchup, though, in the same group, we're going to see Atlanta FaZe and the Florida Mutineers. It's a rematch of the finals from Atlanta. So I'm like, this group is stacked. If I'm just looking at recency here, what's the prediction? Because last time it was 3-0 FaZe over the Florida Mutineers, but the Mutineers kept it pretty close, and it looked like they ran out of gas after pulling off magic beginning middle of Saturday all the way through the end of Sunday.
They were really hot that weekend, and like we talked about on the previous episode, it's hard to maintain that kind of level of play when you're playing the way you're playing. It seemed like a lot of things matched up for that team, and they played amazing. Like, I'm not taking anything away from that run. That was sick. Call of Duty has some teams where they just show up and play the game, and if whatever they're doing works out in a day, and everyone has the kind of skill level to win their individual fights, and you could play literally the game completely the wrong way, and I'm not saying that's what they do, but if 5 players just kill everyone on the map, it doesn't really matter what you're doing, right? Like if we're out slinging about like 30 kills, we could do whatever we want. We're gonna beat you. It doesn't matter. And it seemed like from a high level of play, they were doing everything right as far as how they were playing situations and getting the kills when they mattered. They weren't necessarily out rotating team. I wouldn't say they were playing like controlled Call of Duty or really had much of a mindset on some situations at all, but they were getting it done because they were winning the fights they needed to win. And if a team for example, if you get out-rotated every time, but you killed the team that out-rotated, you get the last 20 seconds on the hill, and then you get like the first 10, 15, 20 seconds on a new hill because you killed them while they were holding their spots. So again, it doesn't, because of how this game works and how close people spawn, out-rotating and controlling the map isn't crucial.
It's not guaranteed points. Correct, like it used to be. Yeah,
exactly.
When you look at this matchup, where does Florida have potential to steal a map? Because I think everyone in the chat is going to say FaZe has got this. You look at previous matchups and just consistency across the board. No one's been better than FaZe.
Yeah, I mean, just based on the fact that I would consider FaZe not being at their best in the last event in Atlanta, and then Florida seemingly being at their best for that event, at least from what we've seen so far. They showed up with a new level tier and they still got 3-0'd. It'd be really hard to kind of expect anything different. Like you said, Florida played a lot of games that weekend. They might have been a little gassed in the finals, and it still seems like they were playing at a pretty high level. I mean, they didn't get mopped in any of the maps. It was all pretty close for the most part. So I would again, just based on that information, not because of my knowledge or anything else. I'm just going to say FaZe is probably going to win that one.
Okay. And, we're not even going to give numbers here. I'm going to call it. It's going to be a 3-0. But I would love to see Florida come and smash FaZe in the mouth and take the first 2 maps like Minnesota did. Can you put FaZe off their game early on in a tournament? Because Minnesota almost did it back in Atlanta, and then, of course, FaZe came back and won the next 3 and went on to win the whole event. But they showed that they can be vulnerable. They just haven't been closed out yet.
Florida also had a really cold start to Atlanta. They played London, and it was not pretty. Like, that was probably, like, the most lopsided match we've seen all year long.
And they didn't look good against Optic either. They were in that elimination match on Saturday night, and I was like, oh, man.
They clicked. Something clicked in their heads that event. And if they can keep that click going, and it's just like it's a switch, and you're like, okay, it's time to play now, and they just start playing and winning, then who knows? But
Brandon MQ, our stats wizard, shout out to Brandon. He's been putting in a ton of work this season. 4-1 on Petro Dom is Florida. So if you're looking for Florida to take a map, if they're able to get the bans to go their way and they get Petro, things would look decent. Overall, 4-3 in Dom. So every other map, not a great record up to this point. I think everyone's going to say FaZe is going to move on. Dallas is going to move on just based on the paperwork here. That sets up Atlanta FaZe versus Dallas again. It didn't go Dallas's way back in Minnesota, but that was at the very start of the game. Do you feel like this is going to be a closer battle this time around? Ray, if you're just putting bias aside, before you sign your contract with the Dallas Empire, how would you think this match would go? Do the players match up 1-for-1? He's chugging the water. We're moving on. So I'm going to go ahead and put FaZe over Dallas, but I think this is a rematch. So let's talk about FaZe or Florida. Which style is more dangerous, Ray? Unpredictability?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like Florida, a team like Florida could come out and just absolutely give you the time of day or just really give it for free. So you never really know what to expect. It's hard to prepare against teams like that as well, because the style of play they've shown has been very kind of inconsistent. They just go from playing game where they're just completely lost, not getting anything done, and the next game they're like, well, we learned how to play the game now, and things are going our way. And to me, that's more like just from an outside perspective, it seems like the kind of thing where certain players have certain mindsets on playing certain situations. So like if my player, like Pristina, ends up in this situation where he knows how to play this the best, and then the other guy who, let's say their skies, their AR, or whatever, is in this other situation where he plays that situation the best, and it just kind of it matches up because they're there when the hill rotates or when there's a S&D round 2v1 or something like that, and they make those kind of plays happen, then they're a good team. But if the opposite happens where another player's in that situation, he doesn't understand how to play, like it could be things like that where the team just isn't all on the same page and certain players have better ways of handling certain situations, and that's when it becomes difficult to like predict. Because if Pristini's always in a good spot, then if he's playing those spots well, then you never know, right? If he has a good game, then he can control the game on his own. But if the opposite happens, then you might get it for free. So I would say it's scary. I mean, obviously FaZe, like I would much rather play Florida than FaZe, just given what we've seen so far, and obviously.
When you look at Florida, I see Caesar as probably the biggest long-term threat. He's going to drop a bomb at some point in the tournament. Normally does it in a big matchup. Search and destroy. He's had a few games where he jumps out to double digits right away, and then the team just doesn't close out the map. It goes a little too long. Pristini, everyone talked about him being the X factor, and you saw the difference when he had a bad match against London Royal Ravens versus when he played really strong in most of the other comebacks throughout Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And then I look at Frosty here as maybe the guy that could potentially be the consistent respawn guy for this squad. Is there a bigger threat for Florida? Is there I guess one player that you think people should be focusing in on?
I mean, honestly, like we can talk about like one players on every team. It's at the end of the day, it's a team game, and you can't really focus on anyone on the map, especially in a 5-on-5. I think honestly, it's more like styles of play you're trying to like. If, for example, if Pristini is the leading charge every game, especially in respawn, and he's the one kind of opening up the map for his team, if you shut him down, then you're going to win the game most of the time or not. So it's hard though, like because it could not be him in that situation. So everyone's kind of all the SMGs are basically supposed to play similar-ish roles. And they all have their kind of little flavor of how they see certain situations. Some just kind of run in, some kind of play it a little slower. But for the most part, if one person's in a situation where they should be doing X, then everyone who gets in that same situation should be playing it the same way. So it's hard to kind of pinpoint a person.
Let's go ahead and call it here for Group B. I think it's going to be Atlanta FaZe versus Dallas for the first spot in the semifinals. Then I think it's going to be Dallas versus Florida Mutineers. Ray isn't going to chime in on a prediction, and Big Timer isn't here. So we're just going to leave it there. We'll let you guys decide what you want in the chat, but I'm saying Dallas is moving on to the semifinals. Let's go over to Group A, though, because while this isn't as strong as our Group B, I think it is pretty even across the board, and I think this one could be quite interesting. How do you see Group A playing out? Because let's remind everyone where we're at with the standings, right? So, looking at the standings, we got the Gorillas with 10 points. We got the Seattle Surge with 10 points. You got the Minnesota Rocker with 40 points. They had a big performance in Atlanta getting to the semis. And then, of course, you're going to have Optic Gaming LA, who is in last place. So going into the groups, we got to look up at the matches here, Ray. And it's going to be Rocker versus Surge. Surge, we talked about it. Enable getting benched. At least that was the last we heard. It sounds like Panda is going to be in the starting lineup. They play against the Rocker.
Yep. Yeah, it's still the same situation. I mean, with how I would just say right now with how the Rocker played last event and how they handled FaZe in some map, and they obviously weren't able to close that out, I would expect 100% Rocker to move on as the leading charge in this group. Just based, again, on what we've seen out of Seattle so far, and then Enable being benched for Panda. I don't know if that's exactly going to change that much for that team. You never know. Again, sometimes it's just a mindset thing, and one player just wasn't putting the time to, and that hurt the rest of the team to get better. But I've seen some scrims without saying too much. I would fully expect Rocker to kind of come out strong and win this group.
Rocker looking like the favorites. I think the real question for me is who is the worst team in the league could be answered by the end of LA. You've got a lot of teams trying to rebuild, a lot of teams trying to make some changes. New York involved in that in our Group B discussion, as we touched on. But here in your marquee matchup, you've got the Gorillas going up against Optic Gaming. You've got 10 points versus 0 points. And we got to talk about these teams, Ray, because they're making some major changes. Rumor is that the LA Gorillas is going to be benching 3 of their starters. Saints on the bench. Aches on the bench. It looks like Lacefield is going to be on the bench. Lacefield went to Twitter. He said, hey, Saints, Aches, what are you doing on March 7th? What do you think about going to watch the Lakers versus the Bucks? Just tweeting basically just blatantly saying, I'm not playing in LA. What's the thoughts with this Gorillas squad? Ray, can this team pull off upsets after making this last-minute roster swap? I mean, you're matching up against the worst team in the league statistically.
Who do we say it was? Spart?
It's so the new players on the Gorillas, we're going to see Blast come in from the bench. He was on there since the start of the league. And then as of February 29th, they've signed Vivid and Spart. Now, Spart was a member of the FaZe Academy team that won the Challenger event in Atlanta. Vivid, a player that made a name for himself in Black Ops 4, has been playing a bit, but doesn't seem like he's had the same amount of tournament experience. I don't know what to expect from either of these guys. Honestly, I wasn't around to watch them last year, and I, of course, was watching the main event, not the Challengers event in Atlanta. But you got Gorillas matching up against an Optic LA team that has had so many troubles of their own. They've been talking about roster changes or potential swaps, moving Dashy to a sub. I don't know what to expect out of either team. Do you have any predictions coming in?
It's definitely an interesting one to say, right? It seems hopefully Optic has figured something out since their last tournament. It has not been pretty so far. It seems like a team full of potential just based on the fact that what we saw out of those players last year. They're all really successful players and all should have a good understanding of what they need to do on the map. Are they just not interested in playing together? Are they just not meshing? Is this game just too different for them? Their pacing seems to be really I would argue that probably is the worst in the league. And they're just not getting stuff done on the maps at all. So they just haven't looked good. And it hurts me inside because I think all those players are really great players. And even at the start of the year, everyone was putting them as a top 4 team. And now they haven't even won a match yet. So it definitely raises some red flags as to what's going on over there. And hopefully they can figure something out. Yeah. If they're going to win a match, I definitely hope it's this one. You have 3 guys. Well, Blast played professional before. It's kind of funny. I think Blast and Lacefields have very similar play styles that they just kind of play super aggressively. They see a red dot on the minimap and they kind of go at it, and that's kind of the basis of how they play. Yeah. And sometimes again it works. If you're getting those kills, it makes sense and you make stuff happen. I've actually never heard of the 2 other players, Spart and Vivid, so I couldn't really speak to them.
Chat's loving Spart. They're saying nothing but great things about Spart. There's a lot of Spart hype right now.
It's been a week at most, maybe a week and a half that those guys have been playing together. I don't know what you're supposed to expect out of a team coming in an event like that. That to me is a little weird. I'm not saying the changes that were made were not necessary. Maybe they are, but I think that's one thing you're going to see a lot more as the year goes on, is teams kind of pick out when they're going to make roster changes and hopefully give the roster the most amount of time to kind of get better, right? If you have 2 or 3 weeks between events, and you're trying to put points on the board. That's all you're trying to do as these teams right now. They're trying to prep for playoffs. Like, you got to look for the grander scheme of things. Unless the team was like that dysfunctional to where they knew for sure they were not going to win the map this weekend, then a match this weekend, then that's different, right? Then you kind of go to the extreme and make these big changes before an event. But it's interesting. I don't know how they're going to mesh. Hopefully they have the coaching. I mean, they have Ricky out there, so I know he's very knowledgeable player and ex-player and has a good understanding what to do. I don't know how those players are listening to him, if they're able to kind of get them on the same page and mold. I would assume that was the bigger issues there, is the fact that you all these vets that are kind of have a mind of their own and probably weren't really necessarily listening to the system that maybe Ricky and the coaching staff and everything else were trying to set in place, and not really wanting to work on their issues when clearly they had a lot of issues as a team because they weren't playing very well.
And honestly, I feel like this is a situation where I'm a little worried for the management there. You went in and you signed some big controversial names, some guys with attitude. Yeah. Lacefield, Saints, Aches, just to name a few. All with great potential. We've seen it at COD Champs, making deep runs on Sundays and upsetting the biggest names in the industry with all the crowds against them. But now your players are the ones announcing that there's going to be roster changes, and they're doing it slyly on Twitter. I feel like Daddy needs to come in and backhand and just drop a few like fines here, Ray. Backhand meaning pile up the money, never physically abuse people. That's not cool. They need to find you need to give some kind of a punishment here. Otherwise, this is just the start of a dreadful season for the Gorillas. You don't want to have that much money riding on the bench and not only not playing and not contributing to your wins, but being toxic to your overall fan base. And I'm worried for the Gorillas here.
No, I mean, I would agree, right? From an outside perspective, again, we don't know. I don't know the full story. I'm sure you don't know the full story, and there's all these things going on. But yes, very much tweeting like this needs to somewhat stop to a certain extent. There's still players tweeting at devs, and apparently a lot of players are getting fined for it from the inside information I've got. So
Karma, what you at right now? How many racks we missing?
So it's interesting, right? So like there's a lot more social media restraint that's going on, which is good and bad in some situations. But yeah, tweeting about you doing things on a Saturday when your team's playing it's crazy to me. Like, I'm gonna say this out loud. Some of these guys don't appreciate the money they're making. All right, this is Rambo Ray, my individual understanding of what's going on here. I played the game religiously for 6 years, and trust me, your boy did not make any kind of coin compared to these guys. And that's mind-boggling. Like, come on, man. You have a great opportunity to do something. Like, tweeting about things like you're saying, for example, that tweet from Lacefield, like, how is that supposed to help you get on another team? Like, or even have a job period next year? Like, a lot of these contracts are short contracts. They're like, I think the maximum these guys could be signed for is 2 years. And if you're not holding your own or you're doing stuff like that, like, what makes the team want to sign you? Not only the only team you're playing for, but another team. Like, if you want another job, that's what's out there, bro. So, and again, not speaking just purely at Lacefield and what he did, but just the grander scheme of things, there's a lack of appreciation for what these guys are doing. And this is work. This is a job. Like, this is not your childhood thing where you're coming home from school anymore. Like, you're being paid a large amount of sum of money that a lot of people out there don't make, and you're playing video games for a living. Grow up, get an understanding what's happening in the world. What are you supposed to do after you're done playing? I'm losing my crap here. Sorry, my voice is getting really high. Okay, yeah, I'm done.
I'm excited and upset. Do you think if LA struggles with this lineup, they revert and go back to their original starting lineup?
It's interesting. Like, this is one thing that we probably need to talk on an episode, but because of how Call of Duty has worked in the past years, no one's really kind of come in and subbed. And when you get subbed, quote unquote, you're mostly getting dropped. And players, it's not just the idea of getting dropped, but it's also players just don't take it very well. Like, I could probably handpick, like, I don't know, 10 players in the whole league who would be okay with being benched and understand that means, like, I'm going to take this the right way, and this means I need to put more time in and work, and my work ethic needs to get better. Whatever I did wrong, I need to fix, and I need to work on myself to do that. And there's very few players in the league who are going to take it where, like, okay, these guys see me as like I wasn't doing what I needed to do to compete at the highest level.
Mm-hmm.
This is me. This is my wake up. I need to do this. I need to put my time to it, do whatever I can to put myself back in that lineup and work for it, not just like sit there and like, oh, the world's over. Oh my god. And again, that's like, but we haven't had that kind of mentality in the past, right? So these players, a lot of these kids just don't understand that's what it means, and you want to fight for your job, dude. Like if you look at all the professional athletes, especially like football, I'm sure you know a lot about football. I'm a hockey guy, you know, Canadian kid.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, nice. Yeah, that's kind of the main basis of it. Out there, like these guys are constantly fighting for jobs day in day out. They get demoted to minors. That's a big eye opener, bro. Like you got to go out there and show your work. I mean, only way you're making it get called back up, just like any sport, is to really show that you have the goods and you didn't lose it, and your work ethic is big enough, your mentality, your attitude, whatever it is that made you get benched, you need to change. And that's like, again, I think that's going to be a few years, in my opinion, before we really see that mentality change. And you actually see like subs really coming in and be used to kind of create that mentality, right? Like, let's say, like, I don't know, whatever team, like, for example, the Blast was a bench player for Gorillas, and now he's getting his opportunity. Maybe he showed that he's willing to put the time in. Maybe he's playing well. Like, we don't know those things. Again, I don't know. Maybe I'm just speaking theoretically, but like maybe he is putting the time in, and more so than Eggs or some other established guys that kind of got on their bums, like, oh, I got my contract. I mean, life's good, you know, I'm playing, you know, it's all right. But like, if you're not performing and things aren't going your way, some stuff's going to happen. These teams, everyone out there is hungry to win. So
and looking at the roster previously, this is from COD Stats. The KDs from, I believe this is just last event, Aqua 1.13, Decimate a 0.97. Eggs had the lowest KD of the event. And Blast, of course, didn't play. So they're benching their low KDs, and it looks like they're bringing in some fresh blood. Maybe this is purely based on statistics. Maybe this is trying to teach the veterans a lesson that, you know, don't get comfortable, don't get cocky. You can be replaced. I'm interested to see what happens, because you're playing Optic Gaming, and Optic Gaming has the biggest names. Maven's saying this is the team to beat potentially. TJ and Dashi can do insane things this year.
Is that Maven's voice?
I think so. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He squeaks randomly, and then Benson just keeps squeaking the whole time.
I love those guys.
Of course, much love, guys. You can make fun of my voice on all of your podcasts as well. I think this is going to be a fun matchup for everyone in LA. I don't know if either teams are going to have a huge fan base in their home city, but I feel like whoever wins this first match is going to get that home crowd with their back the rest of the weekend. Talking about Optic LA, though, that's the team that I expect to be playing the Seattle Surge in the elimination match on Saturday night. Seattle Surge matching up against Minnesota. Minnesota Rocker, of course, going to the semifinals, taking 2 maps against FaZe before getting eliminated with that 3-map comeback. But I feel like Surge is still a question mark. Optic's definitely a question mark. Gorillas, we already touched on all of the issues. Who is the second best team in this group? Who comes out and plays on Sunday?
I mean, I think honestly the Rockers Seattle Surge match will probably say a lot of that, right? Like, I don't think the Optic versus Gorillas match is going to tell us much. Even if, let's say, Optic 3-0s them, like, it's just kind of this dysfunctional new team that maybe just doesn't have preparation at all for the tournament and just kind of show up and like just play because those are the new guys around the block. Whatever systems they were used for before playing, maybe they like help their players understand certain things, because like it sounds like one of the players, Bart, is a successful player in the contender scene, and there's still a lot of good players in that scene as well. So like, you winning that tournament isn't just a walk in the park for the most part. So yeah, no, it's interesting. I just, again, based on what we've seen, I would say Seattle seems to have the best opportunity to come out second in that group. I do really hope Optics show up and have changes that are meaningful enough to kind of showcase the fact that those players are good, and they're still really good, and they need to have a showing this weekend. In my opinion, it seems like they're the next team on the block, right? Because for changes, at least, their subs was it Gunjar and Chino, yeah, I love those guys, and Chino's still, dude. You see some of these clips this guy posts. This kid plays a lot. Like, Chino's a good player, has a great attitude, great mindset. Like, again, it's just like these guys, in my opinion, aren't utilized the right way. And I don't put this on anyone. I feel like it's going to be a few years before you see that system of subs kind of really come in and help. I don't think we'll ever get to the point where like you have a specialist where maybe 1 or 2 teams does it, but where like one guy specifically plays Search to destroy it for this map, because that he's really good at that map. That to me is kind of dysfunctional because your team doesn't really get to practice the right amount.
No one practices search anyway. Can't hurt you that much.
Yeah, apparently, Jesus.
Fix that, Ray.
100%.
Fix
that.
that.
100% going to change.
We're going to bring in a CSGO coach.
You know what, guys? We're coming in. We're coming in hot. We're just gonna, I'm gonna go here, and this guy's gonna do this. Who wants to snipe? Raise your hands. Okay. Okay. Are you sniping? All right. You got the sniper. I know you got the sniper.
I want to know, if you're the Florida Mutineers coach, how many smokes do you tell Havoc he's allowed to rush? Is it all right, you get 1 a game? Or you get 3, but you have to wait at least 2 rounds in between them.
Or it's like the flags in football, where if you have a successful smoke, you can run a new one.
Yes, there we go. I like that. I like this rule. I'm all for it. Practice your S&D, guys. I'm already loving the search and destroy since they switched it from 2 minutes to 90 seconds. I thought that was a big improvement in Atlanta. Way more entertaining, and I'm excited to see the search games again. I went back today and I was watching the Surge versus Gorillas match from London. And for those who missed that, back when Aches, Lacefield, and Saints were in the lineup, I thought they were knocking out Seattle Surge. Surge went down 2 games, went to a game 5. Then it went down to a final round 11 with a 3-on-2 that Lacefield almost clutched up for the squad. So I think that this LA Gorillas team at any point could spark off in LA. I think Optic Gaming could finally show up. They could finally show up after looking JCap looked very good against the Mutineers. If you watched that match, which no one did late on Saturday night of Atlanta. And now that you have Dashy running the sub. And, of course, Seattle Surge could even be the best team in this whole group if Panda is what everyone is saying he's doing in the scrims. He's dropping 40 bombs right there with Octane. Normally, if you have one player dropping 40 to 45 kills, they had a great game. If you have 2 players doing it, you should definitely win that map.
And the guy just got engaged, too. He's running good vibes right now.
Panda's running all the vibes.
Shout out to the man.
So I have no idea what to expect out of this Group A, but let me ask you this question. If Minnesota matches up against Dallas Empire, is this going to a Game 5? Is this a tight series? If Seattle Surge matches up against Dallas Empire, is this a tight series? No comments.
I can't make cricket noises.
Okay. So let's go the other way. Atlanta FaZe versus Minnesota. Their previous one went to a Game 5. Is it close again?
It's hard to tell, dude. Honestly, it just seemed like Minnesota had such a good grasp on those first 2 maps, and then it just lopsided, completely changed. Maybe it's a matching up thing. Maybe their play style just worked so well in Gunrunner and the search and destroy map they played, and then just everything else just was like FaZe's kind of run and gun mentality, and Minnesota couldn't keep up with it. It really seemed like the play styles from a point of view was the pace was the difference, right? If we're playing a slow pace maps where rotating early, it actually makes sense, and you can control the map doing it that way. Minnesota seemed like probably a better team there. But if you play I would say, honestly, in the game, it seems like 75% of the maps are more kind of catered to the opposite role, where we just have to be really aggressive and just push through stuff and put constant pressure. Then FaZe obviously is favorite. So I would assume FaZe is probably going to change their vetoes to kind of rule against that mindset and change things just based on that. I mean, Crowder's really knowledgeable, intellectual player. So he's coaching a team of very young players, and I wouldn't be surprised if he had a lot of involvement in that team and how they're kind of manipulating the maps and play things to their advantage. I mean, they just look like a really, really strong, solid team right now.
Does Crowder have the ideal situation? Because I was listening, I want to give a shout out to TP and the whole crew of Hardpoints, because on their previous episode, they were talking about Crowder, and he was saying just the mentality, how this is not a team playing for stats, not a team playing for the love from the fans, not a team playing for their own egos. They're playing for the win as a squad. They play like a family, and he's trying to coach them to just be brothers from the beginning to the very end of their competitive career. Is he in the ideal situation as a coach? Because I look at it where you got 5 young guys that he handpicked. They're all listening to him, and none of them have egos. Who else can say that in this league right now?
That's the ego part is definitely beneficial. I will say, from experience, being on top of the Call of Duty playing community as a team, when things start not going your way, that kind of changes a little bit. And they have the ideal situation. I'm not saying let's say every team didn't play a single match all year, and we could probably said that anyways, right? We could have been saying this is probably the most team-oriented team in the game. We'll say, for a better term. But when you start playing games and you start losing, or let's say things start going your way, then certain kind of issues start glaring here and there, and that's when the team's really tested. Not saying it's going to change anything, but they haven't really been tested on that front, right? They haven't really had to kind of file in adversity They did come back from a 2-0 deficit, reverse sweep on Minnesota at the last event, so that could have been their first kind of like test to really kind of see where their minds are at. Again, it could have just been a map thing where their veto system wasn't prepared to where they needed to be, where they played the maps that were the worst for them and the best for the Rocker. Who knows? But yeah, definitely like they have the team that it's all young players, right? They're all under 20, I think.
Yeah, they're 19.4, I believe, is the average age.
That's crazy. So sorry, someone's probably above 20, but yeah, no. If you have if a player like Crowder, a coach like Crowder can really get a grasp of his team and have everyone kind of going through the vibes of being happy and things are rolling your way and you're playing well, that's a hard team to stop. And it's a train, right? Like in any game, any sport, anything competitive in the world, if a team's doing well, they're just a train. You can put bumps in the road, it'll start slowing down a little bit, but it takes a long time for it eventually to just stop. And that's kind of like what it seems like with the FaZe right now. They've had bumps, but they're not really that slow. I would say they didn't play their best, or at least they didn't play comparable to their first event in Atlanta, but they still won, which says a lot about their team. And they had some of the best competition there. So, I mean, yeah, obviously props to them on that front. But yeah, it's just hard to tell right now how happy land is going to be if things start going there.
And everyone's saying that maybe they didn't truly get tested because it was Florida in that final instead of the Chicago Huntsmen, who in theory would match up better. So
from a spectator standpoint, I'm really happy it didn't happen that weekend.
Yeah,
because Huntsmen were not playing well at all.
That's true.
Like just from how they played previously in the two events prior, they showed a very different level of play. I don't know what it was. Maybe they're just like completely worried about FaZe and just focusing on that and not really focusing on their steps ahead to get to that point. But that was not the Huntsmen we saw previously. So if they would have clashed against each other, I would have 100% saw FaZe taking that 3-0, and I think it would have been a competition. But if they're both at their best, that's what I want to see. Even as a spectator, coach, anything, like everyone's going to learn from them two being at their best. No one's going to want to see the other part where we could have saw where it's just one team walloping the other team, and everyone be like, oh, well, there was nothing there after all. There is 100% something there. These two teams are very good teams, and it's going to be awesome to watch when they play at their highest level. I don't want to see any other way.
Don't show it yet. I can't wait for the first event where we have Dallas, FaZe, Huntsman, and I think I put the Rocker in at that number 4 spot. I think that would be my top tier semifinals. We'll see how things play out this weekend.
Chicago has FaZe, Empire, and Huntsman at the first event where they're all 4 there, or 3 there. Sorry.
Dallas is there as well.
Yeah, Dallas, Huntsman, and FaZe are all 3 in Chicago.
In Chicago. All right, so guys, get your Huntsman tickets right now. Come hang out in Chicago. Right now, Ray and I, if you're just joining us, are breaking down everything that is going down in LA. It is happening March 7th through the 8th on YouTube Gaming. Make sure you check it out. We'll have the links all over Twitter. And we've got a lot of great first matches coming your way. Here's a look at the leaderboard. The Huntsmen will not be participating. The Legion will also be sitting out there. They're currently at number 3 on our leaderboard. The Royal Ravens will not be participating as they begin their 3 events off. And the Ultra will also be sitting out. Everyone else has a chance to move up our rankings. We're saying FaZe Clan has potential to take over that number 1 spot. We expect them to do so. Dallas Empire and the Rocker fighting for position in the top 3. And Ray, I don't think it's going to be easy for you guys, but I'm feeling good about Dallas. Is Dallas in the finals? And if so, who is the MVP if not on your team?
You want more crickets?
No, just
I definitely expect FaZe to fully without a saying make it to the finals. And obviously, like if you want the perfect scenario for my team, just speaking from a level-headed thing, like let's say our team FaZe and our team, or FaZe and Dallas get out of the bracket, or the pool play, the bracket, then it would make sense for them to match up in the finals if they were to win their matches, obviously, because they're playing different sides. They win their side and lose their side or whatever. So yeah, it prompts for it's almost like you want the better teams, or the 2 good teams in the pool to be on the same front, because it makes it to where they won't play each other in the bracket. So if you can get away with beating the other teams in your pool, not saying there's only 2 good teams in the pool again. I'm going to really protect myself.
You're good. No one use Ray's words against him on social media. Don't be a dick.
But yeah, no, it'd be a cool final for sure if FaZe and Dallas made it through. And then again, it's just a matter of I want my team to play their best, regardless of what that best is. If our best isn't good enough to beat FaZe, or if our best is enough to wallop FaZe, then that's fine. Like it's really about like the progression through year. You're trying to peak for champs or whatever the finals they call it this year. Like everything to that point is a learning process, progression to that point. Just like United last year with Clayster, and they picked up, I think Simp got picked up like midway through the year.
Yep, Sympathy Beasley came into the starting lineup.
Yeah. Like that shows you, like that's living proof. Like that's where the big bucks happen. That's where your money schmackers or anything else. I don't know what money schmackers.
The money schmackers, baby. Just
whatever those
the
are.
backhand the money schmackers.
But you're trying to, like, just like professional golf players. I'm gonna use golf because I like golf. But like all those guys just don't really play during the start of the season. They try and peak for the major season.
Right.
And that's really what's important. Everything to that point is a learning process. You want to win as much as you can, so you have an easy way, and like you're making the playoffs or whatever it is. You want to be in, I think it's top 6 or top 4 guaranteed. Top 6.
I would assume it's top 6 with a play-in round. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So I think, from my understanding, it's top 6, and then 7 through 10 play for a play-in spot, or 7 through 11 or whatever. The last 2 teams don't get to play. The last 2 teams are out. Anyways. So you're trying to basically get yourself to that point, so you get to compete for the finals, and you are trying to peak at that point. Whatever needs to happen before that, if your team needs to lose a lot, it sounds crazy. Again, if your team loses in a matter that you're learning and you're progressing for the next event, it's fine to lose. I'm not saying it's great. Obviously, you just want to be like FaZe and just win every match. That makes things a lot easier, and everyone's really happy. But if the teams that are capable of losing and learn from it are going to be the teams you're going to see at the end of the year and do well, period. There's no argument against it. We've seen it year in, year out, every time, and especially where the meta of the game actually kind of progresses to where most teams kind of have an understanding to play it towards the end of the game, right? Like, we're at a stage now where things are still developing. Not everyone knows how to do everything. And even FaZe, who's the best team, right, if you want to say quote-unquote the best team right now because of how they've been playing, they don't know everything either. They're still going to adjust and do things when they learn something and see something that happens and be like, oh, yeah, on this hard point, we shouldn't be rotating this way. We should be rotating the other way. And then so on and so forth. So there comes a point where, like, normally it's about 7 to 8 months into a game, and Call of Duty specifically because we come out every year, where everyone just kind of sees the things the same way. And then it's a matter of who can execute in the best, who can execute in the best, and who can prepare the most against a specific team on what their strengths are. And that's kind of, again, that's why the ends of the years are so fun when Champ comes around, because you see the highest level of play between all teams, and you see upsets. Like, I mean, who would have thought Aches and EG would have won Champs World War II? Like that.
No, yeah.
Nobody came out of
Cillian
that
Assault raising that trophy.
I would have loved to see Vegas odds on on exactly what happened there. Like, some guy would have been a millionaire or something for putting $1,000 on Fate or on the EG team. And again, that's the same mentality, right? Like everyone kind of has an understanding. Whatever you were behind at that point, you should be behind more. If you're still behind, then you got big problems. And then you show up to the event, and if you play well and everyone does what they're supposed to do, then you have a chance to win. And that is really the case for everyone. Sure, skill, everything else we're saying, like how we're talking about teams, like last week we did the power rankings, all of that is based on skill. Some skill matters in certain situations. If a team's playing the game the same way, skill is going to make a difference. And that's kind of, again, at the end of the year, you see the better teams, the names you would expect to kind of come on top do, because they're just good individuals and they're doing the things better than their opponents. Even though they're doing the same thing, they're just doing it better. So yeah, it's exciting. I'm super hyped for this job. I really loved what I did in the past, but this is kind of more my street, if you want to call it.
This is the perfect fit for you. You've always been the in-game leader. He's been the boss, telling the team where to go, when to hit the rotates, what objective to focus on, when to do it. Now he gets to work with 5 incredible players and really bring out the best in Dallas. Final question I have for you tonight, Ray, is looking at who has the most pressure this weekend. I feel like this is a big prove-it opportunity if you're in Group A. I feel like New York still has a lot to prove to their fans before we end up going to the New York home series down the line here. Who has the most pressure this weekend? Is it the LA Guerrillas, Optic Gaming, the Seattle Surge, or New York, or the Florida Mutineers?
Honestly, just because they haven't made team changes yet, you have to give it to Optic, right? Like, Optic's the team that still, like, obviously they should 100% believe they have what it takes to win, because they're all proven winners, and that shit doesn't just fly away. Like, it's crazy. I'm going to say a piece, all right? I could still compete. This sounds crazy. I am not nowhere near where I was skill-wise. Even we're saying my skill wasn't great. I am worse than that.
Okay.
But if you have an understanding of how things work, you can still compete at a level that's good enough to play at a certain level. I'm not saying I could compete enough to win. I'm just saying, like, those guys don't just lose it. It doesn't happen overnight. Like, you need to not play for the amount of time I haven't played, like 5.5 years, to really kind of lose it. And then, but you lose the playing ability. You don't really lose the knowledge and you understand.
The game sense doesn't go away.
Correct. Yeah, it doesn't. You don't lose that stuff. So to say those guys haven't won because they don't have it anymore is absolutely wrong in every way, shape, or form. Granted, like, again, if maybe they're not putting the time, whatever those small things are, I'm sure they're working on trying to fix, hopefully. But this weekend's going to prove that out, right? Like, you've had a few weeks to sit down and talk. Something clearly isn't working. You haven't won a match all year. Something needs to change. Whatever it's the players need to change, their attitude, the mentality of that team, the coaching, how they're handling their scrims. Are they progressing day to day? Someone needs to sit there with a whiteboard. Whatever it is, something needs to change. And this is a team that needs to prove that something did change, or else I would 100% expect changes to happen.
Dash
and if they don't,
SMG, baby. That's what I can't wait to see. Does it work? Does Slasher become a god again on the AR? How's it all play out? So much drama. Or do they get beat by a bunch of guys, young gentlemen who are now 18 years old, who are coming out of the second tier system and now breaking out with the Gorillas? I feel like that match on Saturday is going to tell us so much about a lot in the season.
That's the one I'm most excited about. Obviously, beyond my own match, I'm really excited to watch that, because that literally is going to set so many kind of almost lives, right? Like, that's going to change people's lives in an interesting way. Like, Gorillas have nothing to lose because they're coming in on the UN. Optic has everything to lose here. Like, this is going to be pressure time for those guys to perform. Like, they need to show up. Like, it's just like, if I'm a person in that organization, like Mud Dog and Pac-Man, those guys are very knowledgeable players. Love those guys to death. But like, their team, this is the point. Like, this is a point where you need to change things or whatever. Something needs to happen. Period. If things don't go their way this weekend. So
yeah,
and you don't need tons of things, right? I'm not saying they need to win the event to like keep maintaining a team. They need to show potential to have the opportunity to win an event, and you can see that when a team plays. Like, for example, like Florida, like they just showed up and like bamboozled everyone. Like, even if they didn't make it to the finals and they had the pool play they had, even before beating Huntsman, I'm like, this team has something. Like, this team showed some pizzazz here and some strength. Like, they don't, like, beating Huntsman was above like they went above that. It was like bonus points in their book. And it showed that, okay, wow, look at that, we're ready to win. We just need to play the same way we did, which I don't know if you can replicate, but who knows? We'll see. But yeah, no, it's crazy. Optic for sure is my team. They have to show something.
All right, I think that is going to do it for the end of episode 7. Everybody, let us know right now who comes out of the groups. Who do you think is playing in the semifinals on Sunday? Remember, you got to pick 2 teams here from Group B. Group B is going to be, of course, FaZe, Dallas, Florida, and New York. And Group A is going to be Minnesota Rocker, Seattle Surge, LA Gorillas, and LA Optic. Pick 2 teams from each. Let us know, and we'll be tracking your predictions. Ray, of course, is going to say Dallas and FaZe. Yeah? Did I guess that one right? It wasn't crickets. Right. It wasn't crickets.
That's what I would like. I'm not saying that's what happened. I just would like it.
Group A, Minnesota and Seattle, or Optic Gaming LA?
Whoa, say that again?
Minnesota, Group A, Minnesota and Seattle Surge, Optic Gaming LA, or the LA Gorillas?
I definitely see Rocker after what we saw last event. The second one is all based on how I want to say Optic over Seattle, but I mean, just based on what we saw, that'd be ridiculous to say, just because of, like, that's really not what the trends would say from an analytical standpoint. So I'm just gonna say Rocker Seattle just because of what we've seen so far.
And I love Clayster. I love Crim6. Big Hook fan. The young guys are great. Rambo Ray, the coach of the Dallas Empire, is absolutely handsome. But I think the Florida Mutineers can make this tournament weird at any point. Keep your eyes on the teal team from the dirty South. The Florida boys are going to get the job done, potentially. All right, guys, that's going to do it for Call of Duty's CODTACULAR podcast, episode number 7. If you missed any of them, we're live on youtube.com/Puckett. You can also check out the live stream every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, twitch.tv/Puckett. That's with 2 T's. Rambo Ray, Puckett, and Big Timer, who'll be coming fresh off of his cruise ship without the coronavirus and diarrhea, hopefully, will be joining